Welcome to the Consummate Athlete podcast, where we explore what it means to be a well-rounded, happy, goal-crushing athlete. Every week, myself, sports journalist Molly Herford, and cycling coach and kinesiologist Peter Glassford interview experts and chat through all of your training questions. We're excited to have you along for the ride. Hello. Welcome back to the Consummate Athlete podcast, Travel Sea Otter Classic Edition. Peter, how's it going?
Well, we've been in the van for a couple days here, returning from Sea Otter, so that's always fun. So we're mixing it up by chatting to each other some more here on the microphone.
And actually, cyclocross fans will appreciate our recording location. So we're in the middle of the drive back to Ontario, and we're currently in Coralville, Iowa, which is the home of Jingle Cross, people might remember.
Well, I think it's Grand Rapids or Iowa City. It's all sort of clustered together anyhow. All clustered together. At any rate, we are in Coralville, which is, just this place that's like weirdly near and dear to our hearts at this point. We just seem to always pass through here, and it's always convenient to stop. Great little single track right off the highway. So after this, we're going to sneak in a quick run just to kind of break up the drive a little bit. But all of this is well worth it because Sea Otter Classic is just a really fun place to be, especially if you are into, I'm going to say, more off-road side of cycling, from gravel to, downhill. There's just so many people around. There's so many of all of the, big names, Trek, Specialized, all the big bikes, a lot of the smaller companies, and just thousands of people out on bikes, which is very cool to see. That's right. And it's been going on for quite some time. I can't recall what year it was. There wasn't an anniversary, I don't think.
No, but I think it's been 35 years. Give or take.
It's been a lot. It's certainly my whole career. It was always the big kickoff for the season. It used to be a lot of the product launches and so forth were there. Some of the new teams were announced. A lot of, there was UCI teams and UCI races there. So yeah, it was really fun. And I think it still holds a bit of a soft spot, at least for the North American industry, where it's a bit of a reunion and a chance for the media and a lot of the racers to connect with the brands.
For sure, yeah. And I mean, that's maybe the one big difference that we were talking about for this year is it does seem like the state of racing there has changed. This race got bought by Lifetime, which is the owner of the Lifetime Grand Prix, which is a lot of the preeminent gravel races and big mountain bike races in the U.S. right now. Also Lifetime gyms, obviously. But so Lifetime bought Sea Otter, so it has become the kickoff for the Lifetime Grand Prix, that 6-race series that's, elite racers going to this, Unbound, Leadville, a lot of the big ones, culminating in Little Sugar and Big Sugar in Arkansas at the end of October. So this weekend was the first weekend in that series. But definitely I do feel like that was the biggest of the pro races this weekend at the event. It used to be an HC mountain bike race, a UCI cyclocross race. Mariana Voss came and raced the cyclocross race.
You said that. I don't remember that, but I'll take your word for it.
I interviewed her at Sea Otter. It was the best interview of my entire life.
I don't know that means it was a UCI race, but it was certainly, there was big names there, and there was a cyclocross race. I will give you that. And that was going on alongside a UCI mountain bike race, and then also some decent downhill stuff, for California, Northern California. And on top of that, the road stuff was a stage race that also would draw out relatively big national level teams and riders. And so this weekend, our perception at least, was that the Lifetime riders were there, which does include some pretty big names. But then otherwise, it was a little more subdued, but I think decent still amount of numbers for the participation for the regular rider like you or I, where it's just people out enjoying bikes, doing the gravel course, doing the mountain bike loop. There was the qualifier for Leadville is also there, the Fuego. So I'm sure there was some great riders there. I don't want to disenfranchise the ones who did race that seriously, but certainly it was more for those age groupers, was my perception, getting their Leadville entries and qualifications.
For sure, yeah. And that race was Saturday morning, and I actually did my long run just kind of up into the Sea Otter, along the roads around Laguna Seca, and then onto some of the the off-road, and I was hoping to jump on the trails, but as soon as I got to the trailhead, it was right when the Fuego started, so it was just like stream of like hundreds of Masters men. And actually it's very fun because I had to run through the campsites. They do camping at Sea Otter, so there were a ton of people that had come from the campsite out to buy the course to like cheer for the guys. So I actually stood around and cheered for a couple minutes, and that was super fun. But Lifetime Grand Prix started. Any like kind of major thoughts, takeaways, etc. from that? This is the first year they've done a gravel race at Sea Otter for it.
And we were speaking to Alexi Vermeulen after the race, and he said it was pretty good gravel, very loose and tight in places, like very narrow, because it's sort of through this what is it, Fort Ord property, which is massive. It's this big military base, I guess, but also has public access on it. But it's just rolling grassy hills as far as you can see. It's how I picture Northern California, I guess. But it was just gravel paths, if you will, for a lot of it, littered into, and then it'll get onto a paved road, and then a tiny bit of single track, and then back onto these roads. So it sounded like the course was well received. It was 3 laps for the pros, so just under 100 miles of a 30-mile loop. So
yeah, and you mentioned, was it Keegan Swenson who like threw up after the finish line?
That seemed to be the big photo. I guess he was just feeling a bit off. But I thought for our purposes, we spoke a bit in the past about, it's okay to have some GI distress or to have things go wrong during a race. And so there's no way he was feeling amazing. But the way that course goes, there's this lookout hill to finish the course. It's usually towards the end of the course. I guess it was an uncomfortable amount of time after that hill this year, a few miles. But he attacked up it, because that's what you have to do to get the gap. But then, posted up, put his hands above his head across the finish line. So there's that photo. But then the instant frame next is him putting his hands down and vomiting across the line. So I thought it was, sort of funny and interesting, and he handled it well, I thought. But the interesting thing for us is sort of just this evidence that, you can have an upset tummy or vomit or have a GI distress thing and still have a great race. Not that you're going to necessarily win the race. That's not where we all are. But you can still win your race in that you achieve your goals. You do well apart from this bit of adversity. And so I thought that was like a notable thing for sure.
I love that. And then on the more kind of like everyday rider side of things, I was actually interviewing 2 riders for a couple articles for Bicycling magazine, since I do a lot of writing for them. And this is for the How Cycling Changed My Life column. So these are just kind of 2 everyday regular riders who actually were, I believe, supposed to do the 60-mile gravel race, and both of them had dropped down to the 30. And when I talked to them after, I just have to say both of them were so psyched and so happy. And like both of them had reasons for dropping down. One of them had just like a lot of work stuff, and just life had been a little hectic, so he just wasn't sure if he was going to be able to handle the rigors of a 60 miles in that heat on that course. The other one was actually just recovering from rotator cuff surgery, as well as breast cancer, actually.
Okay.
Like fairly wild year, and had kind of just gotten back on the bike outside. Wow. And realized like, okay, maybe the 60 doesn't make sense for me, but she thought she could get through the 30. She did.
Great.
And they were both just so psyched. And it was just that good reminder of like, when we're doing this stuff, often we kind of lock ourselves into, it needs to be the longest route. It needs to be, it needs to be this or it's not good. And I just loved both of their attitudes, where it was like, okay, this wasn't exactly what I had signed up for. It wasn't exactly what I had like originally wanted to do. Mm-hmm. But this is where I'm at. This is my situation. And I'm going to have the best freaking time.
Do you think that this is maybe a hot take that we can get negative news about? I was telling Molly, just this is a tangent on a tangent, but I was saying that we did a podcast around Christmas around the Festive 500, and we weren't necessarily positive on it. We said you could do whatever you wanted, but it got sort of like, it was a lot of views and listens, but then we also got a bit of negative, thumbs down on YouTube and so forth. But, it's the classic human thing where most people enjoyed the episode. It seemed like it got a lot of views, so it was positive. But then, of course, I'm like, but there was 2 thumbs down.
This is why you never let me go negative on the website, isn't it, Glassford?
In the name of going negative, my hot take is that maybe the spirit of gravel of the everyone does the same distance, you have to do the 100-mile or the 200-mile unbound. Is there like a bit of a problematic nature to that?
Oh, I love that.
Maybe problematic is such a strong term, but could we let go of that and remember that road racing, mountain bike racing, cyclocross racing all have these categories that don't, there isn't an option to be a beginner 200-mile cyclocross racer, right? Like you must race 60 minutes as a beginner. There isn't even the option.
That's actually a really good point. Yeah, same with road. If you're a Cat 5, your race is shorter than the pro race.
You're never going to have 100, you're not going to do Paris-Roubaix or a 200-mile gravel race or road race. You're going to do, whatever it is, right? It's going to take you 90 minutes or something.
Yeah, so actually, I hope more people actually embrace the shorter gravel distances and actually have like way more fun. I think they both had time to, then actually be at the expo, get their lunch.
Do their post-race interviews.
Do their post-race interviews.
If that's not evidence, you got interviewed.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, well, we'll leave that controversial take. I think some people like going long and being out there all day, so I don't think we want to get rid of that opportunity for people. But it is something that just occurs to me sometimes where it's just always longer. Like now even Unbound isn't enough, right? We have to have Gravel Worlds in the U.S. Is that what that's called? What do we call it?
Yeah, the one in Nebraska.
Not the UCI. Maybe soon the UCI. We'll see. They do even longer now, for example. And it was like, maybe 100 miles is a good pro duration. I don't know. So anyhow, that was that. We talked about maybe my last thing on the Sea Otter. It's just always with the racing it's always been the problem at Sea Otter is you have people in around this amazing Laguna Seca race car track, which is super neat. And then inside of this serpentine racetrack is the expo, and it's like the biggest bike show you've ever been to. Every brand, every accessory, there's trial shows, there's demos now all over the place, lots of demos, there's food and whatever, all these events that are happening, signatures from the pro. But then they have these bike races, which are for every person. You can there's an event for you there, every discipline, every level, every length. That is all still true, but it's still true that they mostly send the people away from the large bike show where there's all the spectators to watch it. And it's especially for the lifetime. This was true of the HC mountain bike stuff. You'd be gone for an hour, and then maybe you come and ride on the racetrack, which is paved. But it's separated by barbed wire, so the people can't actually get to see you for the most part. And so it's always the problem with this Sea Otter venue. They're so close with the thousands and thousands of cycling fans, but we can never seem to get the races to the people or the people to the races at this venue.
All I'm saying is bring back cyclocross. You could have some flyovers going. It would be fantastic. Even just have the last part of the gravel race at least be a cyclocross lap that goes through the venue. That's what Southern Cross used to do. I don't know if they still do it. Where like the gravel race basically finished on a like full-on cyclocross lap.
Sure. Yeah, or a bit of a, Paris-Roubaix finishes I think with 3 laps, or is that how that goes, or is it more
like that?
Is that how Western States the running race is? Is it multiple laps on the track in Western States?
No, it's just one lap.
One lap. Something like that where people could come for the final showdown, because it does often end in a sprint a lot of times at Sea Otter over the years. So that might be something. I don't know. It's a tough one. It's like this gamble of the industry's there and the people are there and the racers are there, and it's trying to mash them together enough.
All that to say, Lifetime, call us. We've got thoughts.
Okay. Well, other than that, did you have other event stuff?
No, I think let's move into just kind of our few overarching observations of the industry.
You were there doing your job as a reporter and an author. You were doing a bit of Strong Girl promotion and wheeling and dealing with different people while you were there. And then also you had a couple industry events, and I'm sure a few articles will fall out of that in different publications. So mostly you were working, and then DW and I were, as usual, sort of just like sitting around doing stuff. But we got out. We did some hikes. We did some bikes, some runs. And then I went through the show. They didn't allow DW in the show. He wanted to go see Sir Willie the Wiener, Alexi's dog. But,
they are good friends.
But he did not get the all-access VIP pass that Willie seemed to get.
Maybe between Big Sugar and Little Sugar, we can do like a live just like DW Willie interview. Okay. All that to say, you just you kind of just
intro.
intro. No, I just wanted to point out, like, I can't do all this stuff without you. And, well, frankly, without DW.
Okay.
You two are my emotional security blanket, my emotional support animals. So
Right.
you are very much appreciated on these very extroverted, hectic weekends.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. I was more just setting up how we were there. And some people were wondering whether I was racing. I did not race. I had debated racing, but I said I didn't want to have to make the decision if I was going to do Leadville if I did the Fuego mountain bike. So I made the easier decision to say I'm just going to continue training. So I called it the Good Old Days Tour. 6 days of riding. We were down in Ventura, some of the old training ground, a bunch of stuff around the Sea Otter. So I had a great week, enjoyed it, saw some good friends, had some coffee. It's not a bad week. So we thought for the people, for the listeners, thank you for being here. We thought we'd sort of just a couple of the things that caught our eye as far as gear, bikes, etc. Did you have one that came to mind to start?
Yeah, well, I think I'll start off with just kind of my overarching industry-wide vibe that I'd say I'm picking up or was picking up this week.
Why? Is something going on in the world we should know about?
Kind of, sort of. And we should actually include a link to Bicycling Magazine did a great article by Tara Saplevy, one of the gear editors, about the tariffs. I mean, I'm sorry. I know this is not normally a super political podcast, but the tariffs do, in fact, impact the cycling industry. So I would say the mood during the week was like a little more subdued than usual. I would say brands currently have a little bit less budget. The cycling industry already was like having a bit of a tough go post-COVID, trying to kind of like figure out where it's going. So I'd say this show was a little bit question marky. A lot of brands trying to figure out even pricing with, potential tariffs, with tariffs on pause. Maybe they're not on pause. We don't know. So I think it's a weird time in the cycling industry. I would say expect prices to probably go up in coming months if I was a betting person. So actually one of Tara's points in the bicycling article that I will just shout out now is like, if you are thinking about buying a new bike, now is probably like, if you have a reason to buy one, if you have a need to buy one, don't go into debt here. Like, I'm not saying like everyone run out and buy the new bike tomorrow if you can't afford it. But if you can afford it, if it's been on the to-do list, I would say don't wait because the supply could get really funky. Whereas like right now, a lot of brands still have current stock that's not subject to any weird taxes or tariffs. So yeah. Probably buying now is the move.
Okay. So, I mean, yeah, it's sort of uncomfortable. I like to stay positive. You like to go negative, but it is sort of a topical thing for any industries right now. So that's probably good. Folks are wondering what the industry thing was. So the industry is aware that this
they
is a
do
thing.
know it's happening, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I would say, though, that the show itself was bigger than I thought it was going to be. I would have expected it all to be smaller post-pandemic, tariffs, bike industry, blah, blah, blah. But in fact, it seemed like it always seemed to me, if not maybe even a titch bigger than I remember.
Well, you haven't been there since like 2017, so.
And now with a few more disciplines, if we said gravel and e-bikes are new disciplines, and then all the old stuff's still there, like they had a dual slalom race, so we're like it's all pretty much there. Cyclocross maybe much less.
Oh,
like no mention of cyclocross.
No mention.
Yeah, I can't remember one cyclocross thing, and I'm sure there was maybe a bike, maybe.
I don't think so.
A bike, someone's bikepacking bike could maybe be used. Yeah. So that would be maybe a thing, is that like cyclocross, you saw Bill Scheiken. So that's Bill Scheiken from Cyclocross Harris.
Wait, I didn't see Bill. I thought you saw Bill.
Oh, no one saw Bill.
Oh, no.
This is a sign. Bill
Jeez.
Bill was the last straw. You should check out the site CX Harris Bulletin. He does a Substack. This is where you find out the information. He just released, actually, I'll put a note here to put this along with the Tariff article Molly just mentioned, the UCI cyclocross schedule. So we'll try and amp up cross. There is a decent US series sort of across September and a bunch of races really, and then a couple Canadian ones too. So we'll give Bill and CX Harris a shout out, despite the fact that he and cyclocross were not at the Sea Otter in 2025.
Now, I will say, to your point about, you just mentioned bike packing, I think one of the points we had here was that there seems to be a lot of these like one bike to rule them all kind of bikes that I'm going to call like a bit of a gravel monster is probably the best phrasing for it. So it's a gravel bike, but it's also kind of a bike packing bike, but it's also kind of a mountain bike. Like it can fit mountain bike tires and wheels. And then arguably it's also a cyclocross bike.
Right.
And part of me, I really like that. As people who live in a small apartment, and as someone who doesn't necessarily feel the need to have a quiver of bikes, despite being in, heavily involved in cycling, I like the idea.
They call it category killer. I've seen that in a few different places. We had a listener in our newsletter, which we'll also shout out. We do a weekly newsletter that has details about the podcast, quotes from the podcast, recent articles, and just sort of hot takes of different types. And so a reader, they didn't necessarily identify as a podcast listener, but I think they were. And so they were asking about 2 bikes from one of the big brands. We won't name the brand because I don't particularly like them. And they had these 2 bikes, and they were both supposed to be category killers, but they're both dual suspension mountain bike company. What am I looking for? Trail bikes. They're basically trail bikes or enduro bikes, or there's this sort of like spectrum of dual suspension mountain bikes. And so I was like, they can't both be category killers because they're slightly different, but like they're the same bike. You would do the same stuff. I'm like, this is sort of confusing. So I agree that the category killer is sort of this like thing, and you thought maybe this was to do with economy, a bit of nervousness.
I was going to say, not to come back to the tariffs and like potential recession, but I do think like there is this tendency that as people start kind of like worrying about saving money and hanging on to money, you do see, especially in cycling, stuff gets a bit more broad, right? Like now this is a bike that you can buy and you can go on most rides. It's a great starter bike, but it's also a great just like, oh, I need a new bike. I'm not really sure what. I want to try something new. Like this is probably a good one there. And I would say it also carried over into clothing. I was seeing a lot more cycling kit that can be used for other sports.
Okay.
So,
yeah, that was one of your takes. And so you were saying that, like the pants now for riding mountain bikes seem very popular. And I said, well, is that just because that's like the thing? People are riding trail mounts, but you said you think that some of it is there's like across the different types of clothing, there's a lot of this, like you could go to the office or you could go to the bar after.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, yes, part of it's just like style, but if you look back, and again, to get like a little styly here, like if you look back in 2008, we had the recession, the housing crisis, all that. And then in the like 2009, 2010, business casual became really trendy as like a fashion thing. And it was largely because that way you could buy clothes that you would wear to the office, but then you also could wear out to the clubs, which like is so ridiculous when you look back and you think about the fact that like we were all clubbing in like pinstripe pants and, button downs. But that was the style because it was sort of a way to stay in style, but also not spend as much money. So I think now the bike style is kind of this like, oh, you could still wear these for hiking. Yeah, this Hawaiian shirt, button down jersey situation. Right. You can wear that all day, every day.
I'm still not convinced on that, but I see where you're going. It could be that there's like this more recreational move. Like certainly in the last couple of years, like I would always get these Lululemon pants, and we started getting like I have a couple sets of Pearl Izumi pants I really like to shout them out. Did we just get? Oh, our friend just got Troy Lee Designs. We were in Laguna Beach, so we were at the Troy Lee Designs store daily, it seemed like, because our friend really likes Troy Lee. It was a fantastic store if you go through Southern California. But they had brand new pants, I believe, and that's why he got them, were these like sort of, I would call them enduro pants or free ride pants, but mountain biking pants. But they're just Lululemon, casual.
I was going to say, he just wore them all week.
Yeah, no, they're fantastic pants. I mean, I'm wearing my Pearl Izumi ones right now, and like the bottom cuff is cuffed so that you can ride your bike without your pants getting caught in your chain, and the pockets are more vertical. But they're just basically Lululemon pants, which I think my Lululemon pants were meant for that anyhow.
Yeah, Velocio also had a pair for men and women that was like a bit more casual, and yeah, just a lot of like very t-shirt top type things that are like their technical fabric, but yeah, you would just wear them kind of every day
you said
anywhere.
A fashion trend that you weren't as into, but you were acknowledging, was this Hawaiian shirt bicycle riding, where it's like you could even wear spandex shorts, but then wear a
button-down Hawaiian shirt over them.
And or like a flannel. Like some people would do flannel, not just Hawaiian, but like a button-down shirt.
And let me tell you why I don't like it. Okay. This is this like faux casual riding thing that like I just find a little bit grating. You can come at me, you can fight me on this. If you stylistically love it, then that's totally fine. I don't actually care.
It's a particular type of person where they're pretending like they're really party at the back, but they're actually the person who's taking a gel and trying to win cyclocross worlds in Philadelphia.
We're not going to say any names or anything, but
you can go back and look at that.
Yeah.
No one's bitter.
No one's bitter about this. But seriously, it it just kind of grinds my gears. This this impersonation of a casual rider when then you're going to go smash the group ride. I just find it a little bit.
Did I say single speed cyclocross worlds?
Well, no.
Just to be clear.
Just to be clear.
There was a party, but it was unclear if it was a serious party or not. Just to go back.
Yeah. So
I am not mad at Sven Nys, who won cyclocross worlds in Louisville.
Sven Nys.
Okay, I'm not mad at Sven Nys, and he is serious, and he knows it, and he
would not wear a Hawaiian
yes.
shirt.
Okay, so just to be clear.
Yeah. So yes, that's just my thing. The only upside of this, though, is, and maybe upside, maybe downside, I'm actually not even sure, is that now it seems like every pair of cycling shorts is coming with 800 pockets. And we were debating the efficacy of some of the pockets. Some of them are just like on the back where, you're right, race radios could fit. But
that's the only thing I can think of. If that's true. I didn't see these shorts that you saw.
That, like, realistically, a lot of them I'm seeing, like, pockets at the top of the back of the bib shorts. And the only thing that would really make sense is race radios. I guess you could have some emergency snacks or like repair stuff in them, but it just seems a little weird.
Yeah, no cyclist has shoulder mobility.
Yeah. Also, I'm sorry, like, I know some people will ride like this. Riding with your phone in your hip pocket, like the pocket, like,
well,
that's
our good
on
friend,
the...
she smashed her phone doing that.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
I think
PSA.
I don't know if they're probably baggies, but like the same phone thing, like on your thigh.
Yeah. If you're riding with your phone on your thigh, like, you are really running like a pretty major risk of breaking your phone or bruising the crap out of your leg too.
Okay. So you're not big on the jorts and the gravel, but some people are. So that's continues to be these like pockets in other places.
And like, I'll be honest, like, I like the patterns and the designs on some, and like, I'm not saying I won't wear them.
Okay. Well, it sounds like you might not have a choice. They're going to put pockets in your shirt.
Yeah.
And it is like, I have seen, like, the gel, people don't like pulling them from their pockets. I would say for me, if it avoids having the top tube bento box, I like the pockets in the shirts.
Okay.
Because I do not like those top tube boxes. Again, to each their own, and some of the pros will use them, but not for me. So everyone has their own preference.
Yep. Okay, I'd say also in the line of like my recession fashion, I'd say the clothing was very neutral this year. A lot of black, white clothing. I would say that with bikes and components too. I didn't really see a whole lot of really flashy colors. I saw a lot of like a dusty purple, both in men's and women's like stuff.
You said a lot of purple.
A lot of purple.
Purple does seem trade. It's not the color of the year though, but I think it's like a poop color this year, to be honest.
I won't be surprised if it's next year's color of the year, though, because often...
Okay, there's a color. Maybe you should trademark it before Pantone.
Yeah, right?
Okay.
So, yeah, I think this purple, both in like a dusty purple and kind of like a jewel-toned purple, so it just kind of goes with everything. I think it's still in the neutral family.
Okay, and I didn't know, because I don't really pay attention, and we both are a neutral palette anyhow in all our clothing and bikes, but... bikepacking.com had a bunch of good Sea Otter coverage, so especially if you're into bikepacking, but just general, they have a few different, like by day, I think, and they actually I use that as sort of like evidence when I was going through our show notes, our script here today, that indeed other folks were saying that the bike brands, and it is true, if you look at Trek or other brands that I'm not going to mention, then you will see a lot of white logo on black. Bags look like black with white on it, and so definitely that's the style right now, or the trend, and perhaps, as you say, that they don't want to get stuck with lime green stuff because everyone's a little nervous about having this trendy bag that's you can't do it.
Exactly, yeah. And I mean, you can have a black bag in your lineup for the next 10 years.
Right. Or in your shop, right? I think it's also like they have to keep in mind that the retailer doesn't want to get stuck. There was a year, 2011 or something, and Trek was all on the road visibility, safety. And so we had all these, I still have all the accessories because I barely wore them because there's like lime green, fluorescent yellow, arm warmers, leg warmers, the bike, like the Trek logo was, and at the time, I didn't think as much about it, but a year later, you just wouldn't wear it. And some people will. It's not for them, but like, most people, that's how trends work. That's the definition, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, and then you also have a note here about a custom gravel bike that you spotted that you were intrigued by, the bikepacking mention?
Yeah, I guess that's where we're a bit of a team. Is I don't know. I just I'll go to the Trek booth and I'll look at the Trek booth. I think I've said that enough in this podcast already.
Trek.
But the thing that caught my eye, and actually bikepacking.com, was over at Cane Creek, which I was like, oh, I used to love Cane Creek. I could never afford the stuff, but I always wanted them, and their logo was cool. This is when I was 16, starting into cycling. We read it in Mountain Bike Action and all these cool stuff. They have so much cool stuff, but they have a bunch of interesting, maybe kooky gravel stuff around suspension. They have a stem currently, and then I think they have a seat post coming, old school suspension seat post with a little elastomer in it, which I don't know. It's not that much different than something like the Trek Demone and some of the other flexi frames. The ISO-Speed decoupler and the double ISO-Speed decoupler. So I don't know. I'm open to some of that stuff with the way that people are pushing their road and gravel bikes. And at some point you have the bike. I have my Trek Crockett, which is the best bicycle ever made. I would say it is a category killer. They discontinued it, perhaps for that reason. But it is an aluminum cyclocross bike, basically a bit of gravel. What? Molly also has one.
Yeah, I just wanted to double check that that's what I had.
Yeah,
that's why I was
Molly
making
has.
the face at you. Yeah.
So, but it is rigid. It is hard. So a seat post, if it works well, if it's stable, it could be great. But what really caught my eye was they have an inverted fork. Suspension fork for gravel, which, okay, like a little eye rolly with suspension, but it does seem like that's maybe catching on this time. And it's inverted, which is cool. And then it also, though, caught my eye because it really increases the tire size. So again, for someone like my bike is pretty restricted. To go over 40s is even tight on my bike. So I'm like, oh, maybe I get this new Cane Creek fancy suspension fork for my Crockett and just really soup this up. All that to say, there was this custom bike, which bikepacking.com, I'll put the link in. They had a picture of it, and it was really, really cool orange custom bike, so you can check that out. But that was sort of like the bike that I was trying to find, what's the coolest bike I saw here, and that was definitely one of the coolest looking custom bikes I saw. And then that fork was just, oh yeah, this snazzy stuff. I was 16 again, looking at magazines, not those type of magazines.
Yeah, the eyebrow just went up over here. Okay, and then it's not a surprise, but the other thing that we noticed is obviously e-bikes are still everywhere. I would say it is amazing to me. Like I remember being there in 2023, and the change in e-bikes since then, like how small the motors have gotten to where you're looking at bikes and you're just like, I don't know if that's an e-bike or not.
Yeah.
Compared to when I was there again, 2 years ago, the bikes were so burly, so beefy. It was so obvious who was riding them. And I would say now, on the displays and rolling around the venue, I had to kind of keep double take. Wait, is that an e-bike? Is that an e-bike?
Sure. Yeah, I think most of the brands have them. There's these new players, who weren't bike brands before and are coming in with e-bikes, specifically, they're e-bike distributors. I agree that there's that almost in the category killing sort of vein you were speaking about earlier. I don't know that it'll happen, but this idea of something like the Trek EXE, which is a mid-power or low-power e-bike, so it's lighter, the battery doesn't last as long, the battery's lighter and smaller. I don't know if that'll catch on or not, but what's sort of I'm hearing about, but again, I don't know if it'll catch on or there's the use case, but that you could pull the battery and the bike would be a reasonable analog bike without the battery, where the weight comes down because the rest of the bike is basically a normal bike. Can you get it so that all the connections and the crank, the difference is not so much that someone wouldn't ride it analog? I think that's going to be hard to do, but we'll see. We'll see what that looks like. The other side of it is that people say it will only be full power, and it doesn't really make sense to get the half-powered ones, especially as the weight and the price and stuff comes down on those. So we'll see.
Yeah. I think probably the biggest note is, compared to 2 years ago, there's a lot more brands entering the space where they're doing not just bikes, but components and parts of the battery and stuff like that. So I think everything's just getting a little more finely tuned for e-bikes. It's really now, it's a separate category. We're not just jamming regular bikes, analog bike stuff on and hoping for the best.
Well, and it's almost like that sub-industry of accessories where you need your special chain lubricant. You need, like you say, maybe you can change and soup up the battery, or our friend Trek makes this, but I'm sure other people will make them, auxiliary batteries, so to extend your range. So this one was a water bottle one that plugs into the other battery and then gives you an extra 50%. So things like that, where you might not have to actually make an e-bike, but you can, in the same way that bike packing, you don't have to make a bike. You can make bags.
I think Gary Fisher actually launched a new company at Sea Otter that's around e-bike batteries.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Apologies for not knowing the exact name.
Are you?
I just remember seeing a picture of a cartoon version of Gary Fisher with new launching
What'll
something
that guy
e-bike
think
battery.
of next? Damn
Seriously.
it. So I mean, that's almost topical. I had the note here. We don't have too many more, but Gary Fisher was the one who sort of at least was the spokesman for the 29-inch wheel, the first 29ers really that were produced at mass. This is probably, people will disagree with me, but Gary Fisher, the bike brand that then came in underneath the Trek brand, had one of the first, I'm going to say the most widely produced 29ers. That was around 2008. And the other big...
I'm going to say, I'm going to stomp all over your big news. I think the only reason Gary Fisher would really get on board with the, I'm going to say it, 36-inch wheel is because I think that man just wants high wheel cycles to come back at some point in time.
Yes, he could ride on a penny farthing for sure.
Yeah.
So if you don't know Gary Fisher, you should look up a picture so this makes more sense. But he was part of the 29 population, which if you were riding bikes or alive at that point, people were really pissed off, and it took a bunch of years, and people would say, no, we're never riding 29ers. They're slow and they don't accelerate, they don't corner, yada. What about the tires? There's no tires. What about this? Your wheels are heavy. So then, of course, now everyone rides 29ers pretty much. I know there's a few exceptions, but there's not many. That would be I would say standard. I think I can say that.
No, I've actually heard recently the 27.5 is dying off.
Right. Maybe for those same reasons I just listed, tires and compatibility. And so there's some people that love them. And so there's this other subset and this has been around for years. And our friends over at cyclingmagazine.ca, this is Canadian Cycling Magazine, they did a fantastic look at this 32 and 36. So it's 32 inches, the main thing, but there's also 36.
36 is ridiculous. I'm just putting it out there now.
So this person was saying it's not, in the article, it's not going to take over the world, but the idea is that there are tall people, and this the way he phrased it was, if you take a picture of a person like Molly on a small mountain bike, you're what, 5'4"? What are you going to agree to?
Sure.
Okay. And then you grab the picture and you just expand it. You grab the corner, the little thing, and you expand the bike and the person, and that person grows to be 6'5". You're a amateur basketball player. What size bike would it be, and what size wheels would these be? You went from a 29-inch wheel or a 27.5 wheel, and those wheels grow up, and he said, well, that's a 32-inch wheel or a 36-inch wheel. If you're Shaquille O'Neal, who are one of the customers, you would be riding 36. So that's sort of the applicability, and so this company makes these bikes for these larger people, and then I guess needs tires and wheels at some point too to make them right. So there's sort of one-off customs, and whether it increases and becomes a category, we'll see. But the stance at this time is that we're not going to ride them, but we'll see, because there's also rumors in racing that the pros are secretly testing them and stuff too. So I don't know.
Who started those rumors? That's what I want to know.
Well, probably that guy and Gary Fisher, but
yeah. All right. Well, let's wrap up there. That is our Sea Otter trends that we spotted. As always, let us know if you have any questions, comments, etc. over at consummateathlete.com or at consummateathlete on social media. Thanks for tuning in, and we will catch you next week. Thanks so much for tuning in to the Consummate Athlete podcast. If you want to hear more training, racing, and endurance sport advice, make sure you subscribe to the podcast and leave us a rating and review. You can also subscribe to our newsletter at consummateathlete.com for a weekly dose of inspiration and advice straight to your inbox.